Hey, it's Ryan from Davan, and today I'm going to show you how to identify if some of your inventory is being tied up in supplemental fulfillment centers. So these are fulfillment centers where your inventory is stored to the side, it's not being shipped out to customers, and this can really hurt you if you're heading into a sales peak. This really hurt us last Christmas because 1,700 units of one of our SKUs was essentially put off to the side. Amazon did not think that we were going to sell those units, so they put them in a supplemental fulfillment center. However, we definitely were going to sell those units, and so we missed out on about $50,000 of revenue. So it's important to add this to your weekly checks. It's something we do every Monday morning at the start of every week, just to make sure our inventory is moving. Now, where can you find this information? Well, it's hidden in what's called the Inventory Ledger Report. So if you go to Seller Central, under Reports, Fulfillment, that will bring you to your Fulfillment Report page, and under the heading Inventory, you'll see here Inventory Ledger. If you click it, you can then say View Online or Download. Let's click Download, and here's where we can fill in some filters. What you're going to do is, if you want to look at a specific ASIN or SKU in particular, you can enter that information here. I'm just going to go ahead and download everything. The type of report is a summary view, so that can be left as is. And under the aggregate report by location, you want to select fulfillment center. For the time period, select weekly. And for the date range, select specific weeks. The from date is going to be not the past Sunday, but the Sunday before. So 2 Sundays ago. And the to date is going to be that exact same Sunday. So you're essentially just looking at last week. Don't select last week from the date range though, because that will actually show you, in our experience, that shows you the current week, which is incomplete data. So just make sure you go in and select manually just the last week. You can then request the CSV download, and that will appear in your download queue here. And once the download button appears, you can download that report. So here we are inside the Inventory Ledger Report. We've had to block some sensitive data such as our SKU, our ASIN, and our title, but those will appear in your own reports. Essentially here, each row shows you a particular SKU, and that SKU's movement or how many units of that SKU are located at a specific warehouse or fulfillment center. That fulfillment center is shown in the last column here, U. And so this is a mixture of all your SKUs, all inventory movements across all fulfillment centers. So we need to do some filtering. We need to whittle this down to just the relevant information. So I'm going to show you how to do that. First, you want to make sure that you have cell A1 selected because we're going to apply a filter to the top row. So once you've done that, go over to Sort and Filter here and click Filter. This will apply a filter to all of your columns. The column that we're going to focus on first is column J. Just make sure that is your customer shipments column and that your report matches the one I'm showing here. Click on the arrow next to the header, and this will give you the filter options. Now we want to only look at fulfillment centers or only look at rows where the customer shipments is 0. Essentially, no units are being shipped out to customers. So we're going to say filter, and we're going to say choose one, and we're going to say equals. So equals 0. As soon as I type that in, it applies the filter, and I can exit out of this window. Now you can see we're only looking at rows where customer shipments are 0. So these are all now fulfillment centers where your units are not being shipped out to customers in the last week. All right, the second column we want to look at is column M. That is the warehouse transfer in and out. So we only want to look at fulfillment centers where units are not leaving. They might still be coming in, but they're not necessarily leaving and being shipped out to other fulfillment centers. So we need to again apply a filter here. Let's select the drop-down arrow. You get this familiar window. And under filter, choose one. We're going to say greater than or equal to 0. We're allowing positive numbers here, greater than 0, because that means units are still coming into the fulfillment center, but we're not allowing negative numbers, which would mean that units are leaving. If units are leaving, that's okay for us. We just want to make sure that units are not, stagnant, that they're not just coming in and sitting there. So Let's exit out of this window now that that filter has been applied. And we're almost done. The last thing to do is head over to column S. This is your ending warehouse balance. Essentially at the end of last week or the week that you selected in your date range, how many units were left at that warehouse. So we're going to finally select the filter window here again and select sort descending. We want to bring the highest numbers to the top, so we want to sort this in descending order. And that's it. By applying those 3 simple filters, you can now start to see if some of your inventory is tied up and being held at these supplemental fulfillment centers without any movement. So let's focus on the first entry we have here. We can see that at Fulfillment Center KRB1, we have almost 1,800 units, and there was absolutely no movement for the entire week. It started with 1792 and it ended with 1792. This was a big warning sign to us that we have almost 1,800 units sitting in KRB1 and they're not moving. And this was right before Christmas for us. We needed these 1,800 units to become available. They were available to buy on the detail page. However, the shipping time said usually ships in 2 to 3 days. So it was really delayed shipping. It wasn't being offered as prime shipping. And so our sales really went down because these units weren't being made properly available to the customers. So we contacted seller support and asked them what's going on with these units. They identified them and said, yes, they're sitting in a supplemental fulfillment center. We will move them to a general fulfillment center so they can be used to fulfill customer orders more efficiently. So that was the major issue that we found. Now, there are other fulfillment centers where multiple units are being held. Everyone's going to have their own threshold. For us, we focus on if there's 100 units or more sitting at a warehouse, that's an alarm bell for us. So these ones here, where we have 200 or 150 units sitting at a warehouse without much movement, these are units that we would follow up on and just monitor. But of course, the major one that we needed to mitigate was the first one here. Now you might notice some of the fulfillment centers are appearing more than once. So we had KRB1, we have ORD5, HMD3. So we are now starting to look out for these fulfillment centers. If these start appearing and a lot of our units start being sent here, it raises a little red flag that we have to go in and check and make sure that there's movement on our units that are being sent to these fulfillment centers and they're not just being set off to the side. So that's one way that you can get an overview of your weekly inventory movements using this inventory ledger report. I'm now going to jump over to Helium 10 for those of you who have a subscription to Helium 10 and show you how you can do it using their platform. So here we are in Helium 10. I've just gone to our SKU page. So to get there, just find somewhere where your product is shown on Helium 10. Next to the product picture, you usually see the SKU name in blue, indicating that it's a link. If you click that, that will bring you to the individual SKU page where you get this kind of dashboard going on. At the bottom of this page is now this new widget called the FBA inventory map. So this shows this cool little heat map where all of the inventory for that particular SKU is located across Amazon's fulfillment centers. So this is just a visual representation of the data we were looking at in the inventory ledger report. Now this map only shows a daily snapshot, so we're going to have to go back and forth through the days to see if there's any movement. What I like to do is to find the biggest bubble, and that's right here in California, and say, okay, there's a total of 583 units sitting here. That was on February 25th. If I go back one day and go to that same bubble, I can see there's 586. So there was movement from one day to the next. So that's a good sign. Now, if you want to see an example of a warning sign, let me go back to our Q4. I'll jump back to November 4th. Again, you can see a large bubble here in California. If I hover over that, it says there's 1,792 units sitting in KRB1. This looks familiar. This is the same number I was just showing you from our fulfillment report. Now, if I were to go to the next day, so November 5th, again, 1,792. If I go to November 6th, again, 1,792. Wouldn't you know it, all the way up until December 15th, this bubble was 792 units. If only we would have noticed this back then. For over a month, we had 792 units sitting without any movement. After this, we contacted seller help, as I said, and they got the units moving for us. But they sat there for over a month. So I hope you don't run into the same problem. This is particularly important if you're heading into a peak where Amazon doesn't think you might sell those units, and so they put them to the side. But you know, and your own numbers show, yes, you're going to sell these units. So if you're like us heading into a big peak, just make sure all of your units are being made available for prime shipping for people to buy. And they're not sitting off to the side in a supplemental fulfillment center. So that's it. I hope you got some value out of this. Go check your inventory movement, and we'll see you in the next video.